Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate and another episode of this series of summer deep dives where I'll be covering all 72 EFL clubs over the next month. I've already done a few. They're available on my Twitter, on YouTube and on Spotify, whichever your medium of choice is. So go check those out once, of course, you've finished with this one on Swindon Town. And I'm delighted to be joined by Ben Nicholls, Hyman80 as he's known on Swindon Town Twitterati, and now from the Fools Rush In podcast. How are you, Ben?
I'm very well, Gabe, today. A little warm but good. How's yourself?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Ben. Great to have you on the podcast. What's the mood in the Swindon Town camp at the moment?
Well, I can talk to you about the fan base. The fan base, it's a little, we're a little anxious at the minute. We're just waiting for something to happen because a few weeks ago we had quite a lot happen towards the back end of the season with Morris getting sacked and Flynn coming in and Sandro Di Michele going and then Charlie Austin signing a new extension. Me thinking things were gathering quite pace quite early, and then over the last month or so it's been radio silence. So we're just waiting for everything to kick back again. Obviously the window opened today, so hopefully we'll see some faces come in fairly soon, but there's been a lot of silence of recently, so I guess everyone's been away on their holidays, so we're just waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, I think the main positive for Swindon over the last couple of years would be that since Clem Morfuni took charge, things have stabilised financially in terms of the running of the club, but there still is possibly that question mark of the direction that the club wants to go in. The last 2 years it's been a sporting director or director of football model. The appointment of Michael Flynn as manager suggests the club's going to go away from that model and possibly a slight stylistic change as well. What do you make of that?
I think last season's campaign was quite disastrous, really. I think we possibly got ourselves into a good position in January to push on, but yeah, the window was awful. It was pretty awful, and I think the reasons why it went wrong were pretty obvious. I think we sold the bulk of experience that we had. When you're losing like your Ben Gladwins and players such of that ilk, without actually replacing with anything really, just youth academy players, and you're going to be considerably weaker, which turned out to be in the summer, in the second part of the season, I should say. Again, we only had like 2 or 3 players, Johnny Williams, Charlie Austin, that were really experienced enough, and it just wasn't enough to see us through the second half of the campaign. We're a team now of some really highly quality, good youth players, but there's not actually that much experience and Football League know-how in the league. I think we watched a game towards the back end of the season when we played Stevenage. We're losing 1-0. And Stevenage just demonstrated the ultimate way of how to close the game down the last half an hour. It's a proper Steve Evans job where he just killed it at every opportunity. And we were completely incapable of closing out a game like that. We just don't have the players. So I think the change of direction is... I think the change of direction is something that's welcomed by the fan base. Not all, but most. I think the introduction of more experienced players and more of an experienced League Two manager, and one with relative success at this level as well, is welcomed. I think the fan base really are desperate for a good season, a promotion season. I think that's all that will do, and the club need to deliver on that, or a good team that can push up there, because at this moment of time, it's not there. And I think the fans are starting to worry a little bit on that. Obviously, it's the first day of the window. You can sign 3 players in the week and everything changes. So it's early days to see how we're going to go. That's where we are at the minute. I think it can be exciting, but it's cautiously exciting.
I Truthfully, I feel like the appointment of Michael Flynn and the change direction that we've spoken about is a little bit of a compromise from
Mm.
Clem Morfuni, because I think if he was looking at this from his own point of view in terms of what do I want to do with the club, I think it probably would be more down the developmental model. But
Yep.
I think that there's a fan base that have, the majority of the fan base have seen their club play in the Premier League,
Yeah.
and certainly higher levels. And I don't think you can sort of discount that feeling of we should be higher up. So I do think that there's a bit of short termism coming into it.
Yep.
I don't necessarily consider Michael Flynn to be a manager that's. I think he's built good teams in the past at Newport County, but I don't think he's developed great players in the way that other coaches at this level have done. So it
Mm.
does feel like a bit of a compromise from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, he's a bit of a. He's a man to get us out of the division, rather than Morris clearly was planning to develop players, because that's what's his history, and it was the same that was done with the previous management. Yeah, he is more of a man to get us out of the division. He has had success with some players. He'll boast quite happily that he's the man that discovered Scott Twine.
Sure.
And he brought him through. So he will, and he knows this league. He doesn't quite like the fact that when he came over, a lot of fans went, well, we're going to be a hoofball merchant team now, and he was very quick to point out, just saying, look, my teams can play good football. It's just at Newport, that pitch couldn't dictate that we could, and at the beginning of the season we did play some good stuff, but the second half of the season we had to go longer because of the pitch we couldn't. And at Walsall I just didn't have the players or the facility to play the football that we wanted, so it was more direct. But he says at Swindon he wants to, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think Michael Flynn is right to bring up the fact that I think it was the 2021 season when Newport got to the playoff final, where in the first first sort of 3 months of that campaign they actually played some really good football, and like you say, I think once the pitch gets a bit muddier, that became difficult, and then once the pitches dried up they actually started playing again. So I'm not going to write off Michael Flynn from that stylistic point of view, but in terms of Walsall, he brought in about 20 players last summer.
Yeah, quite a busy summer, I remember. He got quite a lot in early.
It's not like he had to adapt to what he had. He had a big say over the recruitment. Okay, they did have a director of football. The director of football left, didn't he? I'm not sure about that one, because I think he did have quite a lot of autonomy at Walsall.
Okay, well, no, it see what happens, but yeah, because I mean, when he went to Walsall, it was a massive coup for the club, and everyone's thinking, he was greater than Walsall level was, and eventually he disappointed. I know a lot of the Walsall fans, when he left, are not quite, or when he joined Swindon, weren't all over our socials laughing at us. A lot of them don't blame Flynn to what happened. So I wasn't at Walsall, so I couldn't tell the direction of the club or the interference he had from upstairs, or what there was there for him. I don't know in detail what happened. But as I say, he's had 2 playoff campaigns in 4 years, so he obviously knows the division quite well. We've been linked. There's been very few links, because the club have kept that close to their chest, but I think one of recently has come out as Cameron Norman. If that actually develops into something there's something behind that, I think that could be quite a good signing. I believe he's done quite well for 2 years running. I think he's got Player of the Year at Newport, and be quite a good right back, which probably mean Hutton's on going out, but then we'll earn quite a bit through that. There's been others as well, but nothing solid. But a lot of them are just like easy connections from previous clubs. So we'll see. Again, it's so early doors at the minute. I think a lot of clubs are clicking into gear, and a lot of clubs have made some signings. But for us, there's a lot of unknown still to happen, because we don't see the team that Flynn's developing yet. It's hard to judge what kind of season we'll have. It looks as though we're going to keep hold of our better players, the McCreachans, Hepburn Murphys, Laviniers and Fraser Blake Tracy's all will play a very important part this season. But I think we do need to add to it considerably if we want to be where we want to be.
Yeah, and then I think one player who is going to be crucial to getting you to where you want to be is Charlie Austin, because I
Yeah.
remember in 1920, Swindon Town won the title under Richie Wellens and had a goal scorer in Eon Doyle, who uh, just absolutely broke all sorts of records across
Yeah.
Europe in the first half of that season. He wasn't necessarily that involved in the sort of general build-up play, but he was kind of freed up just to poach in the 18-yard box.
Hmm.
Charlie Austin's got history. He's done that throughout his career. So I think he could be really somebody for Swindon Town to build around. The question I would have is, are you confident that Swindon can find the creativity, the width, the flair, the different ingredients required to sort of streamline Charlie Austin's job to just poaching in the box? Because we know that if that's the case, he's going to get you goals.
Oh, Charlie Austin will score 25 goals if he's getting the right supply in. He can be lethal in this league. I think a lot of fans of other clubs have written him off for the fact of what happened to him under Morris, and Morris sort of kind of misused him a little bit. And it's no secret the two didn't get on, and eventually Charlie just got dropped from the team altogether. But the two games that he did play under the stewardship of the caretaker manager, Gav Gunning, he was man of the match in all three games, and he scored 4 goals. So he looked really, really good. So if we can get the supply to him, but again, as you're right, the hardest thing is finding the creativity, especially at this level, and that's also what costs the most money. I think if we are to find it, we need to find them as permanent, not loans. I think we do need to possibly start looking above. Maybe if we can drag someone down from this level. Johnny Williams was ideal, but obviously he's moving on now. So yeah, that's big shoes to fill to start with, and then we need to find more. So I think not only do we need to find a little bit more steel and a bit more know-how to see games out and see things through, because we conceded a lot of late goals last season. We had a really soft underbelly, but also the ability to find possibly that target man that Austin can work off.
Yeah.
And also the creative wingers, and the ball players in midfield who can create those opportunities and who can slip those passes to get them in. So it's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of activity, but it's going to be a very, very busy 6 weeks or so, I think, at the county ground.
I think you're right to bring up the target man role, because when I go back to a template of Michael Flynn's 18-19 Newport County side, I think they scored about 73, 74 goals that season. That was where they had Porrick Hammond, who's very much a sort of persistent poacher type. He likes to, quite a nippy player, but he's very much, likes to get on the end of knockdowns. And then the player providing those knockdowns was Jamil Matt, who you'll probably see quite a bit across these leagues. Very much an archetypal target man. But I think that Michael Flynn will argue that his sides can play football in certain circumstances. But I also think they probably do need the option to go direct at times, because it won't be always playing out from the back. I can't.
No. He's already said that he's not going to waste his time just playing risky football, playing out the back. So he's saying he'll play good football, he'll play attacking football, but he's not going to slow play it from the back anymore. So that's something that's not going to happen. So I'm expecting to see a couple of traditional bruising centre halves maybe come into the side as he's always had in the past. Which is fine by me, because it's again something, set plays we do really badly at. We've not had scored set plays since we even had Richie Wellens. We weren't particularly great at them, so that's something that will need addressing this season. So I say that's a couple more centre backs to go with the other players that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking it's interesting we mentioned Newport as possible clubs. Cameron Norman. There's reports there. I like the lad Priestley Farquharson. He had an outstanding.
Yes, he's another one that's been mentioned.
Yeah, and he's very much. I think he'd be one you'd be looking at to recruit as a middle centre back. I'm assuming Michael Flynn will play 3-5-2. In more recent years, he's been. Oh, you're not sure about that?
Yeah, well, that's what he's been playing. So he played at Walsall, and I assume that's probably what it was at Newport. I think he's got a quick off-the-shoulder striker in Hepburn Murphy, though I think he's probably best as an outside right rather than an out number 9 or number 10. He can play that role, but I think he's better just cutting out wide and running at players. I don't know if he could see him as a winger. I don't know if that's kind of his thing, pinging in balls. Yeah, so there's lots of question marks on how you fit it in around the players that we got. Yeah, I can see McCreechan fitting in quite nicely into that role. We'll just see what happens. Well, really, because obviously there's going to be outs as well as ins, and let's see who makes way for players coming in and what price we get for them. Because again, we've got another one, Jacob Wakelin. There's another striker now.
He's another inside.
Are we going to keep all three of them? I don't know. I think one might make way. If it is, it probably might be Wakelin, but he's contracted for 4 or 5 years, so it could be Hepburn Murphy. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, sort of thinking about it now, if Wakeling and Rush and Hepburn Murphy stay, that would lend itself more to a front three than a front two, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
In which case, I mean, I remember actually, if we go back to the 1920 Swindon side, you kind of had Jerry Yates coming in from the left. Whether you could have Hepburn Murphy coming in from the left and Jacob Wakeling coming in from the right or cutting onto his left foot as sort of inside forwards, whether that could be quite a dangerous sort of attacking trio with Austin.
Yeah, well, Austin played a little bit as a false nine last season. He's played quite deeper, a little bit deeper, and then you had the two wider players that also would come in. And he can do that role quite well, really, and he just makes little late runs into the box, and he's really hard to pick up, and he's good at losing the last man. So that could be an idea. Personally, I hope that we do stick with the three up top, because what we've got are based. I've been playing that and are primed for that. I still would like a proper number 9 though as an option, just to mix it up and when we can change things. And I don't know if Charlie at the age of 34 will play more than 30 games a season, because he needs to be managed a little bit now he's getting to that age. But I'm encouraging that. Obviously we had DJ last season. It's probably a similar type of player to Austin, you'd say, a fox in the box poacher. And he got the best out of him. He's had his best season of his career, so hopefully, I'm thinking that maybe he can do the same with Charlie, and maybe Charlie can have a bit of an Indian summer. But we'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a great point as well, actually. Danny Johnson, the half season he had at Walsall, and actually that probably. Because Walsall were actually in a really good position halfway through last season, and then they lost Danny Johnson and they lost Liam Bennett, and then a couple of the players they brought in, like Jamil Matt and Matty Stevens, they actually brought in halfway through the season, but both of those players hadn't really played much football at all. So I think there were some external circumstances that probably went against Michael Flynn last season, and really when you look at it, he got Newport County to 2 playoff finals in 4 full seasons.
And cut runs too.
And both those times they were a Rizzler paper away from winning. It was, that they arguably deserved to win, or very close in both those games. So I think that's definitely a feathering in his cap, considering the budget that he was working with at Newport as well. And
you look at Newport now, since he's left, have slid back down to where you expect them to be, now they're sort of like a bottom 5-6 League 2 club, and he took them from there, brought them up, and they've slid back down again. So as I say, I'm hoping that the second half of last season was just an anomaly, and he's just had a bad second half which ended up losing his job. But we'll again, it's something that we shall see in time.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned a few players at the beginning there in terms of players who can have a big part to play in 23-24 for Swindon. One of them was George McEachran. What do you like about him, and why do you feel he can?
He's so good. He's so good. Again, he's someone that if we had him earlier in the season, I think probably would be playing above this level now. I think he's one of the few good things that came with Morris. McEachran wanted to play again for Morris. He won under 18s, under 21s, I can't remember, World Cup, where he featured heavily in that team. And he was on quite a bit at Chelsea and was really tipped to do quite well, and then obviously something will happen, and it sort of disappeared, and he's come back in. But he's so competent and confident on the ball. I remember when he first came into the squad, and he looked like he'd been playing football for 10 years. He's one of these really cultured players. He's got a good pass on him, great engine. He's box to box. He's got a good shot on him. He can take a good free kick. He's good at dead ball situations. He can pick a pass. He can have vision that's a little bit beyond what you see in this level. He can see passes ahead, which is something that again is really, really good. So yeah, and that was just his first season, and he walked into the side and became one of our best players. So I'm really hoping that this one, after a good pre-season, is the one that he really kicks on and really becomes a big asset for us this season. And hope we keep hold of him in January. But we'll worry about that in a few months.
Cross that bridge when we come to it, yeah. What do you think of Sadhu Khan as well? Because I think he's looked like a really exciting ball carrier.
Yeah. Well, he came with a big reputation, a really big reputation with the Chesterfield fans. And I think the fans expected a little bit more than we got from him. When he played when he was on it, he's a sort of like 1 in 4, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 player that he's outstanding. He's all over the place. Again, he's a threat in front of goal. He can pick a pass and he's strong. He had a bit of a disciplinary issue last season that he's not had previous. He suffered 3 red cards, so we missed him for a lot of games. And he does get himself involved in nonsense that he really shouldn't. So I think that's something that may need to go out of his game a little bit. He has the ability to go on and kick on to a higher level. He's just been recognised by not Ghana, Gambia, his country birth. So he's just gone off and gone play for them, which is good for him. I think it was his first season in the EFL. Hopefully he again can kick on and just be a little bit better, and for that year's experience last season. And hopefully he's learnt a lot and he becomes a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, hopefully that's the case. And sometimes for those players, it's just a case of the penny dropping at a certain moment, and then all of a sudden those 1s in 3s, 4s and 5s become 2 in 3s, 3s in 4s.
Yeah, he's definitely got it. Absolutely. Yeah. There's games that he's been outstanding. I mean, like, he's been standout. But you have to sit a couple of average games where he's been a bit hit and miss, and he's getting himself silly bookings, and then he'd be on it again. So hopefully Flynn can get that consistency out of him, because he's got it in him. But as I say, it's his first season in the EFL, so hopefully now this got that behind him in his second one, and that can be said for a few players like Lavigne as well. Lavigne is such a quality talent. He's got everything that he needs to really, really establish himself as a much higher than this level. But he scores goals. He's quite good with either foot. He's a natural right back, because apparently he's been playing left back most of the season. You wouldn't know, because he can jinx with his inside and outside. He's direct. He can run with players. He's really, really good. Should have played more games than he has. He's unlucky that he hasn't. So he's possible also another one that I'm really keen to get a number of games under his belt and see how he kicks on this season.
Lavigne is a right back though, right? Isn't he?
He's naturally a right back, but Hutton been right back all season this season, and because he's had 13 assists, he's been going forward. He's been fantastic. Lavigne has not had a look in his favourite position, so he's been stuck at left back when he's played, and FBT's had to go in the central. So he's been a right back who's been playing left back most of the season when we've had that position. Then we've had Joe Tomlinson there as well, and obviously FBT there, so his chances have been limited.
Sorry, I really like Joe Tomlinson. It's just a shame that he's had those injuries, isn't it? There's been a lot of debate with Swindon fans about him. I personally love him. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I think he would be established at Peterborough if he didn't have had his injuries. I think that there's a high ceiling with him. He scores goals. He's good with either foot. He's right-footed, but he plays left back. Everyone forgets that. Passes as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's got great vision of pass, good cross on it. He's got everything. But after every 3 or 4 games, he breaks down, and it's not serious injuries. They're just niggles, little niggles that keeps him out for like 2-3 weeks, and it's not one thing entirely. So you can't say he's got dodgy hamstrings or dodgy knees. It's just like the last time he was out for 6-7 weeks, he stood on a ball awkwardly and and done it, rolled his ankle, and it's just like stupid things like that. And it's like eventually they'll hopefully, because he's young enough, they'll just stop.
Yeah.
There was an option to buy, and I know Morris was quite keen, and he could come back as a swap deal for Hutton, but Swindon are not willing to trigger the fee agreed now. That was agreed in January, which Sandro agreed. But I don't know if if Hutton's going to be used as a tool to bring Tomlinson in, maybe, but it depends what Flynn thinks and what Flynn sees, and Flynn might just see him as an injury-prone player, so might not bother.
I reckon that if you can get some money for Hutton and get Tomlinson out of the deal and use the money for Hutton in order to get Cameron Norman as a right wing back, I think that's a bit of a coup, because then you've got three really good fullbacks or wing backs. You're probably in profit, and you've got yourself a really big signing from one of the best right backs in the league last season.
Well, fullback wise, if that's the case, we've got Lavinier, we've got Norman, we've got FBT, and we've got Tomlinson.
Of course,
so as fullbacks go at this level, that's as good as half the League One team. So, so we'll be fixed there. But it's all the other positions.
Sure, yeah. Where's FBT's best position, do you reckon, Ben?
Left back. Straight away. Left back. He is brought in as a left back. He can play centre back because we had an injury crisis. But he got player of the season last season for what he did at left back. He's quite good on the ball. He's got a really good cross on him, but he's really good in the air. He was our best defender in the air. He's strong in the tackle and he's committed. The best way to describe him is a Jay McEvely, if you can remember him.
Yeah, a little bit early for me, but
okay, but yeah, he's a typical Jay McEvely type player. He's tough, he's strong, he's pretty good on the ball. Straight away, he looks a little bit like him as well. But for me, he's just he's the spit of Jay McEvely. He's like a little model of him. So if any Sheffield United fans do remember or watching, it's like Jay McEvely.
Okay, all right. Well, that's certainly helpful. That's really interesting. It's great that he's had a fantastic season. I suppose the fact that the fullbacks is such a strong position for Swindon Town, and you mentioned there that Blake Tracy's best position is definitely left back, presumably in a 4. Does that lean you more towards a back 4, especially considering what we've talked about in terms of the wide forwards? Does 4-3-3 suit this current Swindon squad more than 3-5-2?
Sorry, the car went past. I missed you. Could you say that again?
Sorry, does 4-3-3 suit this Swindon squad better than 3-5-2?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you say with the 4 players that we've got Wakelin, who can play more centrally, but again, he's quite strong, bullied and direct when he's got the ball at his feet and likes to create stuff. And you've got the same on the other side in Hepburn Murphy, and then we've got Tyree Shade as well that can sort of play that wide attacking role. So we've got a number of players that can do that. We've got Austin who can play as that central striker or the false 9 or the actual 9. I'd like to see us bring another one in, and then it's the creativity, what's behind him in the midfield. We've got a couple of nice number 8s, as you say, in players like Khan, and you've got players like McCreachy, but we need McEachran, but we need more like that. We've got Ian Dollo as well, but I think he's probably likely going to go to Crawley. I think he nearly went in January, and I think I'm expecting him to go back there as well.
Lindsay Link.
Yeah, Lindsay Link. And so I think we need to strengthen that midfield as well. I think we need a strong battling centre midfielder. I don't know. I know there was that lad that was linked. There's been 2 lads that have been linked from Warsaw's that could be lazy links. That chap begins with, there's Kinsella as one. I don't know if he's that type of player that can do that. And also the other one that everyone's snuffed their nose at a little bit, going he's a bit past it. The lad begins with L.
Oh, Josh Labadie.
Yeah, him. And
yeah, I'm not. I don't like to snuff my nose at it because I hope everyone does well. Like I'm not, but I think that he's past his sell-by date a little bit, where he's had a few seasons of injuries. I think he's about 32 now, and I feel like he's got to the stage where he's still really aggressive, but he's then, after being aggressive, if he gets sort of outmanoeuvred, it's difficult for him to get back because he's not maybe got the same agility that he had. So for me, I think for a team aspiring to finish in the top 7, I don't think that's the level of signing we need.
I quite agree with you. But I think we need that sort of, Anthony Grant, for a Swindon fan, would fit. Yeah. That's what we need in midfield. And we need a couple of good 10s. And then a couple of centre-backs.
Yeah, quite a few.
And a goalkeeper. We haven't got a goalkeeper. We need to get some goalkeepers.
One of those.
They're quite important too, goalkeepers. Personally, I quite like an experienced one. We've tend to have gone to youth over the last few years, but I think the Grimsby one's just come. The lad at Grimsby's just become available.
Max Croker.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's just said his goodbyes to the club. I'm hopefully, someone like that'd be quite nice. But I wouldn't mind someone who's played a few games, had at least one season on the VFL football underneath him. I think Bryn was very good, but he kind of lost his way a little bit towards the back end of last season because the lack of competition. Though I think he's got a decent future in front of him. I think, I'd much rather a solid, experienced number 1 between the sticks. It could be Ward. I'm not totally against him. He's been training with the club towards the back end of last season after being let go by Sutton. I'm not sure why they would, because I think he's quite a good goalkeeper for this level, but we'll see.
Yeah, I understand the argument for an experienced goalkeeper. On the flip side, I think the fact that so many clubs like experienced goalkeepers actually ironically means that you can get a really good quality of lone goalkeeper who's from the youth setup, because if lots of clubs are saying no, we'd rather go with experience, then you can end up with goalkeepers who are actually better than the level in terms of ability, but kind of drop down in terms of the sort of shopping list because they get overlooked because of the lack of experience. I think Crewe have signed Harvey Davis, a lad on loan from Liverpool who's England under-20s, which is really high pedigree. So sometimes you can get quality in the loan market in goal. Something
personally, I think so, because we've done quite well with some young Lawrence Vigouroux, who's now about to go to the Premier League. He did fantastically well, young goalkeeper. I think who's that? Bender, Swansea keeper. He made his EFL debut with us. We've had some good ones. We've had some a little bit too early, like Mathieu Kovar. I think is going to be a class keeper one day, but he was at Swindon League One a bit too early and it was disastrous. So we've done quite well with young keepers, but I wouldn't mind a calmer influence beyond the goal.
No, I get that for sure. And I think Michael Flynn, by the way, he had a goalkeeper called Joe Day at Newport for a lot of his time there, and that might be the route he goes.
Tom King was someone also that's been mentioned. Sorry, his name. Okay. And he's been about a few clubs, but I think he could be. I think he was at Northampton and went up with them. So. If we bag him, that'd be quite good.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's hope that's the case. Any young lads coming through at Swindon from the B team or the academy that we should be looking out for?
No, see, we've not actually that great at bringing them through for a club that likes to develop young players. We've just released a load. We've got. There's one lad with a Polish name's escapes. He's just signed a 2-year deal actually, rather than just one pro year. But I think he'll be loaned out most of this year to hopefully the National League, but maybe the National South. I've forgotten his name. The Swindon fans are telling me right now on the thing, but my name's gone blank. He's quite good. But I think he's about it at the moment. Who's realistically going to make an influence into the first team?
Who was that?
Dorzak, that's the one. Thank you. You know my club better than I do. Yeah, Dorzak.
No, I don't. I was literally just looking at it.
Dorzak's. Dorzak's one, and we've got another little striker, Carnu, as well, who's got quite a good reputation. I think again possibly a bit early to really have a breakthrough season, but I think he'll be loaned out again to the National League clubs. He's a tricky little fast player. He made a few JPT pizza games anyway last season, and no doubt he will this season as well. And Dorzak, I think Dorzak probably will play beginning League Cup game, a few JPT games before going off on loan. But yeah, I think they're the only two that we've really got that are coming through.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, it was they had to sort of restructure the sort of development squad when Morfuni took charge. So maybe you're not quite in a place where you've got a crop of players that are ready to come in necessarily. So
when he first took over, he says he wants two teams. He wants a development side and he wants a proper second team. And then he wants the full first team, and he wants a link between the two. So he wants a B side basically. Eventually, but I think that's not even possible in League Two on League Two budgets. So obviously we need to be at a higher level before we can start doing that. But he did say he wants a sort of B team, that there's a strong link between the two, the first and the second team. So they're getting more. The younger players are getting more men's games. It's sort of like Brentford model and that sort of thing. That's what he wants. But again, I think that's a long way off. I think we need new training facilities and the ground improve. All that needs to happen first, and get out of League Two more than anything.
But it's great that there have been some improvements in terms of structure over the last couple of years.
Oh, we own the ground. Work starts on that. Well, the plans, the trust who own half the club with the club, or half the ground with the club, they're actually coming up with some ideas now, which are going out to votes, which will happen in development. It looks as though they're going to have an STFC museum put in there. I think they want a hotel put in there. The statues that have been made up about the ground, so it's all going to be properly done up. I don't know if you've been to the county ground at all, but behind the town end, which is quite small, ground, you've got a huge car park. I mean, it's massive, and there's lots of scope for knocking the town end down on a big stand, a real big stand. And they want to put a roof on the bank. So there's ideas what we can do. There's no official plans yet, but that will come through, and I think work will start at the end of the season at the county ground. But we own the thing now. So what is more useful now is the external debt is also almost paid up entirely. I think there is debt owed to Mr. Morfuni, which is in the millions, but he says there's no interest on that and there's no date to pay that back, and he won't take money out of the club. So that's probably something that he's going to get when he sells the club. He's going to look to try and get that back on there, and so that helps the finances. Also, that we're not paying rent anymore. Half the money that we were paying the rent will now go into development of the ground and ground improvements, because it does need looking after. And the other half of the rent now is freed up, so hopefully that goes towards the squad. So that's a little bit more. So hopefully that'll go towards the budget that will be competitive at the top end. We'd like to think.
Yeah, let's hope that's the case. But you've still got to use that budget wisely.
Yeah, exactly. It's no use having all this money and then wasting it.
Yeah, of course. And in that vein, Ben, Michael Flynn's obviously going to have a big say in the recruitment. Are you confident that he'll be supported efficiently with a backroom team and a recruitment staff? Or
I think he's been brought in with it's your team. It's you bring your own backroom staff. I think you've got a couple of mainstays in there, like Mildenhall, the goalkeeping coach. He's part of the furniture. I think he comes with the club, so you're not allowed to get rid of him. I think when we interviewed Houston a year ago, before we employed Lindsay, I think Houston wanted to bring his own men in, and so the club went no. So I think there's a few that are mainstays that he's got to keep, but I think largely it's he's got his own. I think he's got his number 2 he had at Newport. I've forgotten his name right now.
Wayne Atwell.
Atwell. Yeah, he's got him. Good knowledge. So far, that's all I know that he's got in, but he's probably got other people in mind. At the moment, there's no plan to get a director of football in. So I think he's got a big say in who he brings in and who he doesn't bring in. So it's his team. He seems pleased at Punch. He said all the right things. It's like he's come off the phone to Richie Wellens and what things to say to police the Swindon fans, because he's just sounding like him. He's just talking about how much of privilege and it's honour and it's great. And every time you see him, he's got a big stupid smile on his face. So he's doing the right things in terms of getting the support with the fans and getting the fans behind him. I just hope he delivers what he says, because the Swindon fans do respond to good football, fast, entertaining football. It doesn't have to be total football, just attacking football, and then the fans reward that. And I think, you know, we turn out on our numbers. As I say, we averaged like over 9,000 in League Two last season, you know, so we're a loyal bunch, even though we had a poor season last season and we're quite unhappy. It's like the season ticket sales are as good as last season, so I think, you know, hopefully we can have another 9,000 again this season, and that will give him enough money to bring in who he wants, and he chooses wisely. Obviously there's a lot of luck that comes into that, and obviously players that gel, but fingers crossed we get what you want. It's just nothing's happened yet.
Yeah. Well, let's hope we'll have a few more signings to chew the fat on in a few weeks, because it's going to be a competitive league next year.
It's going to be a lot harder than last season. I personally thought League Two was poor last season, as in for quality wise. I got criticised a little bit when I've been on other podcasts, especially your one before, by saying that, and that wasn't a criticism of the teams out there and that went up, like Stevenage were brilliant, but I think the general standard was lower than the season beforehand. But I think this season it's gone up several notches. With the introduction of teams like obviously the two that have come up, Newport are going to be strong, Wrexham are going to be strong. You know, they're two teams vying for top three. You know they're going to.
Notts County, I think you meant.
Notts County, yeah, that's what I meant. Notts County, and the teams that are coming down as well. I think MK Dons might be in and around the playoffs. I think they'll be all right. I'm not sure about Forest Green, and Morecambe look like they're in trouble, but we'll see on them. But I do think that the teams around like Gillingham and Colchester are going to be a lot stronger this season.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, especially Gillingham. Especially the news broken that they're just signing Johnny Williams as well, which is going to be an unbelievable signing for them. I think they're going to be a real force this season.
And so then, Ben, let's look at, you've got your Mansfields, you've got your Bradfords.
Yeah, it's really, really strong. So we've got to be very wise, and they've got to gel, and we've got to be lucky with injuries. It's not impossible. It's just going to be tough to get out of this league.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really intrigued to see how Michael Flynn does this season. What do you think Swindon are going to need in terms of numbers this summer? Do you think you're looking at another 8 to 10?
Well, I think we need about at least 3 centre backs, to be quite honest. I quite like the young lad we've got, Clayton. He's really good for Liverpool. Yeah, he was dropped in the deep end last season because we had horrendous injury worries at the back, and he was left as our only centre back for a good 6-7 weeks. And it was sink or swim for him, and I think he learnt a lot through that. I think he'll be better with an experienced centre back with him. He was a lot better when we had McDonald. Again, not replacing him. Stupid. He was a lot better when he had McDonald, and I think he'll be stronger again with another centre back, with an experienced centre back with him. But I think he's got a good future ahead of him. I think we need 3 centre backs. I think we need a couple of number 10s. I think we could do with another winger. I think maybe another number 8 as well, just to strengthen it a little bit there in midfield. A number 9, 2 goalkeepers. And find out what's happening with our fullbacks if we do get Norman in or not. So there's as I say, it's going to be incredibly busy over the next 6-7 weeks. Hopefully, if it's not, I'll worry.
Yeah, and then of those signings, I think that sort of totted up to around, certainly into double figures.
Yeah.
So do you think that, how many of those signings do you think are going to be players that are going to have to come in and improve the best 11 straight away?
They're all going to have to be at some level. The majority are going to have to be, obviously some are going to be loans, and the loans ones are going to be rather inexperienced, as they usually are at this level. But, you know, I think key positions, you're going to need players that have succeeded at this level before, or have played at or playing at sort of like in and out of the first team in a League One team. I think that's sort of the level we're looking at. But certainly experience and doing well at this level is quite key. I wouldn't mind a eye raiser, a marquee one to get excited as well about if we can pull something like that off. I've no idea who, but like a Johnny Williams that we did. But if, you can get one of them in, that builds up excitement and that builds up. That'll get the fans in as well, and build a little attention to the start of the season. But I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think solid, experienced players, which they cost a fair bit of money. So let's just see that we've got that budget.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of players who, let's say, for example, Swindon, you're striving to finish in the top 3 next season and maybe drop into the top 7, but let's say we're striving for the top 3 finish. How many players do you think you've got that could be could potentially start 40 plus league games in a team that finishes in the top 3? I reckon Jake Wakeling for a starter has potential.
McEachran obviously is one up there for top player. I think Hepburn Murphy can quite easily play at a higher level. Charlie Austin can play at a higher level. Wakeling signed a 5-year deal. Again, if he had one season behind him, now this is the next season where he kicks on to an high level. He started really, really well last season, sort of tailed in and out, and I think if he can kick on, because he's a very talented young boy, he was nominated for one of the Young Players of the Year in the EFL last season. I think we can get better out of Khan. I think interested to see how Jake Kane, someone we've not mentioned yet as well, who played under Flynn, 25 games, did quite well. Not so well last season. He's been a little bit of a scapegoat, but I'd like to see if he can kick on as well.
Louis Reed, supposedly, isn't he?
A little bit. Yeah, good left foot. Again, good dead ball specialist. Scored an absolute worldie towards the back end of the season. Last game of the season, and it was really interesting that 15 minutes after he scored that worldie free kick, it was the best I've seen him play all season. He was everywhere, and if he can bottle that up, we've got some player. But for largely, he's quite frustrating because for every good pass that he puts in, he puts a lazy, sloppy, unforced error, which, to quote a tennis quote, which I hate, unforced error passes, where you just, there's no reason, you just boot it out of play.
At least he hits the net, though.
Yeah. He's another one that he could do well. I think we can see better at Shade as well, because Flynn, again, Shade had a good season. He had a really good season at Walsall. He came at Swindon being quoted as one of the best of a bad bunch when he came over to Swindon. He was our first signing. A lot was expected after him. And again, when he's come off the bench, he's an impact player. He scored goals off the bench and he could make things happen. But again, he's been so frustrating where he does some of the donkey work and then just runs the ball out of play, or that mispaced pass at the end, or that scuffed shot, and it's like, but it's League Two, so what happens? Cool. Yeah. But again, he's young. He's a young player. He's 22 years old. Again, he's another one that's just been bolstered into the St Kitts team, so he's been acknowledged by his country. But he's someone that, if he can get that run of games, can click in and kick on. Lavigne as well, I think, is one of the better young players. So the talent is there. We're a very talented outfit. If we can get that momentum and that experience can lead those young players in the right way, and have a good dressing room and have a good training atmosphere where the development happens, then we can. But it's going to take every piece in the puzzle to fit in place for that to happen. What needs to happen for us to push top 3. I think everything needs to fit in place perfectly. Realistically, I think we are an outside bet for a playoff place at the moment in time. That's where I think we're looking at next season, which is going to be disappointing to hear from the Swindon fans' point of view, my point of view, because I want promotion. I'm desperate for promotion to get out of the lead. But as I look at it, unless something drastic happens in the squad, I think we're going to be finishing between 6th and 10th.
Yeah, I'm actually feeling a little bit more positive about Swindon listening to you talk, Ben, because
I have that effect on most people. I'm one of the most optimistic Swindon fans around.
But it's interesting because I almost I came into this conversation with a few reservations, but now we've kind of looked at it from a slightly different angle. You look at it, and I think if you can bring in an experienced goalkeeper, an experienced centre half, and an experienced destroyer. That's three areas where you might want to go a little bit over budget, because those three players, or a little bit above, the sort of bar, if you like, because you want to push the boat out in order to get the right players,
Yeah.
because they could complete the equilibrium and the sort of the dynamics of the team with a bit of experience to sort of balance things out, and game management, things like that, which he struggled with last season, and maybe a bit of a sounding board between Michael Flynn and the squad. But actually, I don't think you're that far away listening to you talk, because fullback positions look strong. You've got some midfielders with loads of potential. You've got some forwards with loads of potential. You've got a guaranteed goal scorer if there's chances for him in Charlie Austin. And if Michael Flynn can deliver on the front foot attacking football, maybe there's actually there's some optimism at the county ground.
I'd like to think there was. I think the caveat that some of the other Swindon fans would say, the more the ones that are more sceptical, I should say, was our form last season was dreadful. The second half of last season, from January to May, it was like just above relegation. But I think I listened to an interesting pod last week, EFL podcast, about our nearest and dearest Oxford, and how they had a really poor season, but could be tipped to do a bit of a Plymouth this season, because though they had a bad season, the players they got are a lot better than what they produced, and if they get someone that can get them going and get them right, they could blossom to something that's quite strong. I like to think that of us in League Two. If we can do that in League Two, if we can get the right balance in and the right manager and the right fit, we can get these potential to work out and to turn something quite good. But it needs to, everything needs to click into place. Momentum is huge in football. We need the momentum. We need luck with injuries. You need a good dressing room. You need a good manager to unify that dressing room. And then I think we can work, but obviously it's a lot of ifs and buts, and we'll see what happens.
No, but I think the interesting thing that I feel like is that although the results, especially in the second half of the season, were really disappointing and a lot of defeats, and I don't want to underestimate that, it felt like you sort of weren't far off in terms of individuals, but there was something to do with the collective that was missing. And when you don't have leaders in the group, when you don't have the game management aspect, when you don't have maybe players who can set the culture from the top, then you can have the individual parts, but you don't have the sort of the complete package. So maybe actually Swindon are a little bit closer than maybe what's suggested, especially with a manager in Michael Flynn, who's been able to build good collective teams that are better than the sum of their parts, rather than weaker than the sum of their parts.
Absolutely. And it's just I personally quite looking forward to see what happens, because as I say, the squad's quite young. There is potential. There's a lot of players I think that can play at a better level, but it's yet to be recognised. But hopefully these players can have now they've got the hardest season done, which is their first season, the season where they just introduced themselves to this league. Now they know what's coming and what's expected of them, and they're used to the atmosphere, and they're used to they've been there now. Hopefully we'll see better of them, and hopefully we'll see more consistency, and hopefully we can have a good season towards the top end.
Yeah, absolutely. Just need to give them a bit of help with signings in the next few weeks. Ben, such a pleasure to chat to Swindon Town with you. Absolutely lovely stuff, mate. So thanks for coming on. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been EFL Debate, the summer deep dive on Swindon Town, and we'll see you again very soon.